Hello there, my very good friends. On today's Wrestling News, we are going to outline the latest reported struggles with WWE's creative process.
A backstage update on Vince McMahon's problem with Keith Lee.
Certain WWE employees have been given a $3,000 stock award.
And why Karrion Kross versus Santos Escobar was pulled from NXT this week. I'm Adam Wilborn.
And I'm Andy Murray.
And this is the news.
All right, we're going to kick things off with an exclusive report here from Ringside News talking about the WWE creative process. What's going on? Bruce Prichard, Vince McMahon. How has that situation somehow become cloudier than ever? Well, the report states here that there's a new policy within WWE that stipulates that if you're in a creative meeting and you're on the writing team with Vince McMahon, but you're not at that meeting, you will no longer be given notes from that meeting. This has left people in the dark. It's left people out of the loop. If you're not in the room, you're not going to find out what happened unless you speak to your mate over there and you know how Chinese whispers works. One person tells another thing gets mixed up, blah, 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 blah. It's not part of the report. That's just me talking bollocks. The report states that this has Bruce Prichard's fingerprints all over it. That comes from one of their sources. And one quoted source calls it a power grab on Prichard's behalf. Here's the direct quotation. "I don't know why Bruce would have most of the staff operate in the dark, but it seems like another power grab to me." Another source remarked that Vince McMahon needs to come to his senses on the situation and realise that he is creating something of a tricky situation backstage. Of course, we're on the road to WrestleMania, the heavily marketed road to WrestleMania, one of the busiest and most important creative periods for WWE all year. So for writing staff to be left in the dark on situations at times like these is not ideal. So with something like this, you miss a meeting and stuff. Yes, it's not ideal. But at the end of the day, if we're holding one of our ideas meetings here at WhatCulture and say I'm recording something or Adam's doing a podcast and we come back and there's nothing to come back to and jump in on, that's a really stodgy creative process. And that's just in a company a small scale compared to WWE's hours. If you did it in WWE, it sounds like a gosh darn nightmare, particularly in this era when, people are from home, people are on Zoom calls, people's internet connections might suck, all kinds of things can go wrong. If accurate, this report sounds like rubbish within WWE. It's another thing that working for WWE in a creative capacity sounds like the worst job in the world. And reports like this really compound that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a shame because the creative process was going so smoothly with WWE until this report came out. Like Andy said, this is bad at any time, but particularly on the road to, this big marquee WrestleMania where fans will finally be allowed back in and hopefully a part of the fallout will be attracting fans back to the product and bringing them back to arenas, etc., etc. It's madness. Now, don't get me wrong, I, for one, would love a lot less writers being involved on Monday Night Raw. I think you can slim that down. I think it doesn't really matter whether you have 10 or 100 people because at the end of the day, they're still only writing for an audience of one. But like you say, It just seems so backwards that particularly this time period right now, they aren't all collectively getting together and going, right, this is what's our plan for this superstar, for this title, etc., etc., as we head towards WrestleMania. And it just feels so... It feels so cliquey as well in terms of you weren't there. Well, you won't know what the plan is for Edge next week then. What were you doing?
Yeah, it makes no sense whatsoever, does it? I mean, we've all watched the creative videos for recruitment that they upload on their corporate website. If you've not seen that on the careers website, go and have a look at that. It's ridiculous. It's like, hey, I'm Tony from Connecticut, and I have experience in writing everything apart from wrestling. Such a weird company, man. Such a weird company. We've said it time and time again. It feels more like a content production company at times than a wrestling promotion. So never surprised to hear things like this coming out of WWE, and just hope that creatively they get it together on the road to WrestleMania, because I think the card has a lot of potential if they do it the right way.
The only thing I can compare it to is if you had a go-kart race, but Lewis Hamilton showed up in one of his Formula One cars, but he drove the whole race with the handbrake on. He'd still win because he's in a bloody Formula One car, but there's so much more potential there if you just work out the right way to do things. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about Keith Lee, because I suppose this sort of relates to the whole creative issues within WWE. A backstage report from Ringside News as well, talking about Vince's problems with Keith Lee and why we haven't seen him, really push on after that dramatic introduction to the main roster and defeat of Randy Orton in 7 minutes or whatever it was.
Yeah.
This report from Ringside News says there is a degree of pushback on Keith Lee within WWE. Vince McMahon believes the company is yet to find the special spark needed to take the former NXT champion to the next level. They also say that his promos have, quote, failed to catch on fire since he transitioned to the main roster. He, of course, got sent back to the Performance Centre for a bit with a few other big lads like Big George, Omos, and Otis, and a few others. Basically, McMahon thinks that Keith Lee isn't yet the finished product, hence why he's just sort of in the mix, and now he's in the US title picture, although we're still not sure whether or not he's going to appear at Elimination Chamber on Sunday. My immediate reaction to this, Andy, is if you think his promos have, quote, failed to catch on fire, you write them!
Yeah.
He's an insane performer. Clearly, look at the excitement around him, not just over NXT when he was, just going on a complete jump into the stratosphere, winning the North American Championship and then the NXT Championship at the same time, and then dropping that and all the bollocks, and then they just put Karrion Kross over, etc., etc. But think back to Survivor Series when he was the last man in there with Roman Reigns, and he's an insanely talented performer. You only need to watch his WWE documentary to know that. You're the reason why he hasn't really elevated, because you've given him weird soliloquies to talk about on Monday Night Raw. It's a load of, I almost swore then, load of bollocks. It annoys me, this, Andy.
It is. Promos haven't caught fire. Well, maybe don't script them. Maybe don't script everyone down to the letter. That might really help. I mean, it's working pretty well for the other wrestling promotion on the other channel, where I think it's pretty safe to say you will find the best promos in American wrestling every single week, barring maybe a few exceptions.
Pat McAfee, who does his own promos.
Pat McAfee. Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman comes up with all that stuff because Paul Heyman's really genius at this stuff. Yeah, it's nuts, man. It's nuts. I always, put faith in the performers rather than the system when it's this particular system. And when someone fails, it's usually the fault of that system when someone doesn't get over to the degree that people would like. So still holding out hope for Keith Lee. He's a very talented guy, very charismatic guy as well. So it's kind of weird to hear things like this. Rooting for him. Hope he's at the pay-per-view.
If Vince is sat there going, I can't work out why he didn't get over. You changed his music, you put him in a sodding skirt, and then you kept having him lose but win and be involved in a load of DQs. You know what he did when he beat Randy? Just keep doing that. Yeah. Oh man, it's Friday. I need to chill out. Sorry, Andy.
It's almost like, beating people strongly is the way wrestlers have gotten over for 100 years.
If only there was a tried and tested method for this sort of thing. Yeah, Andy.
It's really weird. It's not like this has worked for a century or anything. Anyway, we're going to move over to a report from Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, the foremost independent expert in the business of pro wrestling, who reports that a large number, not all, but a large number of WWE staff members and employees are about to receive a stock award worth around $3,000 that will fully vest in March. WWE have not responded to a request yet for a statement on the matter. However, it comes just 7 days, of course, after that news that WWE employees, you're not getting promotions, you're not getting raises, you're not getting bonuses. There's no word on whether or not these two things are linked, and if the stock award is a response to that at all. There's no suggestion there. However, it's a £3,000 bonus. £3,000. Have I said that the whole video? $3,000 stock award bonus that vests in March. It's a nice little boost, I guess, for people who are not getting raises and bonuses at a time when the company is making more money than ever. I am always happy to hear anything that's good news for the employees of WWE and the men and women who work for that company and serve as independent contractors. So this is good.
Yeah, it feels a little bit too little too late with all the wage issues that we've talked about recently, but I've been doing a lot of reading about the whole GameStop thing, so I hope these become, what is it? Stonks. And you can eat your tendies, and the stocks go to the moon. I really don't know anything else about this, so I'm just gonna leave it there.
I don't know. And Wolf of Wall Street.
All I'll say is, how do you do, fellow kids? Right, let's talk about Santos Escobar versus Karrion Kross. It was meant to go down on NXT this week, and then on NXT, Santos Escobar just got a promo. He went, Yeah, I'm going home. I'm not facing Karrion Kross. It got rescheduled to next week's NXT, and according to a report from Meltzer on the latest edition of Wrestling Observer Radio, it was due to a medical issue. Although the interesting thing, we're not going to speculate as to what that is, whether it's an injury or the ongoing global bastard. It's not our position to say, we don't know. But sounds like he was shocked that it was only pushed back a week. If that match doesn't go down next week, because Santos Escobar, I don't know, has car trouble or something, he's going to be stripped, I believe, of the Cruiserweight Championship, suspended. And that's a real shame, because I really he's not been booked great, but I love Santos Escobar and El Legado del Fantasma. And it just feels a weird direction they're going with him and with Karrion Kross in all this. Yeah,
it does. It is a strange little thing. If their hand has been forced by a medical situation, as is reported here, then it makes that a little bit more understandable. But yeah, it's a weird little feud that I don't quite get. Karrion Kross is the face? Is he the baby face? What's going on?
I have no idea.
Either way, I just hope that whatever medical issue here, it's not serious, hopefully, and hopefully it clears up and both guys back on TV kicking ass real soon.
Exactly. Right, let's move on to your Twitter questions. At WhatCulture WWE, of course, if you want to get in touch with us. First question today comes from the Wrestling Tweeter, who says, what do you think of Asuka doing an open challenge at Elimination Chamber? This is my brutality, rings out. And then Rhea Ripley beats Asuka, and then Charlotte challenged her at Mania because Rhea can then beat her to reverse last year's result. # sorry, Asuka.
I think it's a really interesting idea. I think Asuka versus Rhea would be so sick as well.
Yeah.
And then Rhea getting her revenge at WrestleMania. I think that's a really good story. I would worry about Asuka in all of this because it's not that I hate the idea that people can't lose in matches. You should always be able to book with balls and have wrestlers coming out of losses looking good. But WWE aren't good at that. They're just not good at elevating people in defeat. And Asuka is at a point in her career where she really needs an elevation. She's been Raw Women's Champion for a long time, but she's been kind of shunted over here while Charlotte was her tag partner and thrown in these, unimportant feuds like fanning around with Alexa Bliss's spooky pervert nonsense on Raw. She, to me, is someone who really needs a big boost at the moment. So while I am definitely 100% down for Asuka and Rhea at a different date, maybe for the title, and I'm definitely up for Rhea getting hold of the Raw Women's Championship and beating Charlotte at WrestleMania, the timing on it might not be right. Maybe if this was 6 months later and Asuka is on a really sick run, that might have been cool. But for me, not quite yet.
Yeah, me and Hamlet were talking about this when we recorded our Elimination Chamber preview podcast, which will be out over the weekend, about what they're going to do, obviously, with Lacey Evans' pregnancy. Congratulations again. You assume she's out, and that's it for her now in WWE for a prolonged period of time. Just look at how long Becky Lynch has been out with good reason. I think we eventually settled on her doing an open challenge or her just repositioning the match to face Hayden Bloody Royce, because you can have a decent match against her. Asuka retains, then you have Asuka, if this is the direction you want to go in. I don't like it, but Asuka drops the title to Charlotte at Fastlane. Rhea challenges Charlotte at WrestleMania, wins. Nice little bow on everything. And maybe you can even transition Asuka over to SmackDown in the next few months, just to freshen things up a little bit for her. But yeah, I feel like her dropping it just on an open challenge technicality is a bit of a weak way to end what has been an impressive reign, despite the fact that WWE have just forgotten about her recently. Mr. Spiffy gives us our second question of the day, saying, hey guys, with AEW reviving the barbed wire exploding ring match, what do you think the chances are AEW can get Mick Foley to cut a promo on Mox and Omega on Dynamite?
Yeah, I mean, that would be really cool and really interesting. I'm not too sure about Mick Foley's Legend contract or deal with WWE at the moment, so obviously that might be a potential barrier, but there's a lot of people you could bring in to do something cool here. And hey, listen, if you're going to bring in Mick Foley, why not bring in Terry Funk as well, man? Like, at the same time, like, they had one of the most legendary death matches of all time, King of the Deathmatch 5, in 1995. Cadiz Jack and Terry Funk. Terry Funk was being tweeted about by Dustin Rhodes the other day. He's in a lot of hip pain at the moment as well, Terry, so this would be a nice thing to do for him. Also, Dory Funk Jr. was on AEW this week. Why not bring in that Sushi Onita as well? Kenny Omega, as Michael Sidgwick has pointed out, has been wearing his leather jacket for about 6 months. I have a hilarious story about that man in New York City that I would love to share on a future podcast or video or whatever. Can't do that today, but I will at a later date.
Oh, you tease. I really like this booking. I like the idea of people coming in and going, you don't know what you're getting yourself into at Revolution. And who knows? if the opportunity arises, I'd love to see Mick Foley. Terry Funk, just to mention him, get well soon. All of our thoughts here at WhatCulture are with him. I hope he recovers soon. And whilst we're speaking of Mick Foley, quick plug, go and buy one of Mick Foley's masks that was designed, a Mr. Socko mask, designed by our very own Phil Chambers. And I believe, apologies if I got this wrong, Phil, I believe all the profits go to the Cauliflower Alley Club. So it's all for a good cause. Go and check that out. It will inevitably be on Mick's socials and on Phil's at Phil My Chambers. Final question today comes from Cholo Magzino, who says, who are the artists that you first heard in wrestling that became a part of your regular music rotation? Mine was Billie Eilish back at TakeOver New York with You Should See Me in a Crowd. Yeah, Eilish is someone I picked up on after her involvement with NXT.
Yeah, there's probably quite a few over the years, but like, thinking about it, man, when I was like, the height of my wrestling fandom as a kid was probably like the end of the Attitude Era, the turn of the century. I got into wrestling in 1992, but like that's when I was really obsessed with it. That was a lot of butt rock, really, wasn't it? It was a lot of, oh yeah, yeah, and like rap metal and stuff that didn't really stick with me, although Limp Bizkit are the greatest band of all time. Jimi Hendrix. I was probably a little bit young to fully appreciate Jimi Hendrix, but Hulk Hogan coming out to Voodoo Child is just the most badass thing of all time. It's just so cool, and that got me into Jimmy a little bit. A more recent one, Brody King from Ring of Honor. Big, massive, tattooed, burly, scary man who'll kick your ass. He's in a hardcore band called God's Hate, and if you're into that kind of hardcore, metalcore stuff that like just smashes your face in, you should really check that out. They got a new album coming out soon. But yeah, man, it goes back like 20, 25 years. It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know what came first, me listening to Limp Bizkit or me hearing Limp Bizkit on WWE, but they are intrinsically linked for me. As I said, Billie Eilish, there was a video that Adam Nicholas shared with me promoting the ongoing feud between Ciampa and Gargano with Bury a Friend on, and that was it for me. But and her involvement with TakeOver, as mentioned in the tweet there as well. I had a surreal moment where I used to be a radio presenter, and one of the first people I interviewed was Clement Marfo, who did the Champion song that was at the Royal Rumble when CM Punk faced The Rock. And that was weird because I'd like met him and knew he was a bit of a wrestling fan, so I quite like that. And a more recent example, Imagine Dragons. They'd someone I'd always sort of listened to, but when they did the Monster song with Daniel Bryan, I've not looked back since then. Love Imagine Dragons. Right, let's move on to today's ad finally. And Jerry Lawler shooting off Nia Jax, just tweeting a photo with him sat in traffic with a load of snow around. I hope everything's all right for our friends over in America. And he just tweeted a picture of a cloud with a big hole in it and said, saw this hole in a cloud today in Memphis and immediately thought of Nia Jax.
Every cloud has a silver hole, as they say. Oh, God. Yep.
Right, let us know your thoughts on that and all today's news stories in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Got the SmackDown preview later, WrestleCulture with a hashtag Bloody Good Quiz. And as I said over the weekend, we'll be previewing Elimination Chamber. Don't forget to join us for our live stream for that on Sunday night as well. You can let us know your thoughts and Twitter questions on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And watch there, follow both of us. You can follow Andy Murray at Andy
H. Murray. The H stands for Happy Birthday, Sean Spears. Where the hell is he? And speaking of Spears, free Britney.
Oh, wow, I didn't expect that. Yes, happy birthday, Sean Spears. And free
Seriously,
Britney.
free Britney, though. This is some mad stuff that's going on. Jamie Spears, you're an evil man.
You follow me on Twitter at Adam Wilborn. Follow us all at WhatCulture WWE. But for now, my thanks to Andy Murray. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Shouts to Britney.